Good evening. Next sessions, my word.
Next sessions. It's great to be back.
It is so good to be back. Give us a shout out if you're in the room watching. We're seeing loads of amazing people bouncing into the room. By the way, if you're Scottish, we don't want to know anything about the rugby. We really don't give one. We've always been more crickety people.
I genuinely don't know anything about the rugby.
So. No. Anyways, it's so good to have you all in the room watching from around the country. In fact, the world. And it's interesting because we've already got off to an interesting start today, right?
Oh my God.
It's been pretty wild. It's been a wild ride. It's been a wild experience. Like I text Wayne a few minutes ago saying, "Hey, dude, are you going to come into the waiting room, in the format we're using, the forum we're using?" And he says, "No, we've got another hour, haven't we?" Because even though there was an hour change here, there wasn't one there.
No.
And me, in my supreme organization finesse, totally dropped the ball on that one.
So it's actually like just gone 5:30.
5:30
in
a.m.
Melbourne.
And because we know Wayne and Ruth quite well, we can imagine what's playing out right now in their hotel room where they're staying. So just to put you in the loop, Wayne and Ruth head up Acts Global, which is the Apostolic Church Australia, a phenomenal movement, an incredible movement. And Wayne and Ruth are just amazing.
Oh, yes.
Well, to be honest, first and foremost, amazing people, aren't they?
They are.
That's they're just amazing, quality, good, godly leaders. But they're just great movement leaders as well. And they also lead Resound, which is part of Acts Global. It's a phenomenal church based in Melbourne. But currently they're kind of touring Australia, visiting their leaders around the country. And so at the moment, they're in the middle of one of these things. So they agreed, we'll do it, and we'll do it live. So we want to see a lot of love for that in the chat spaces, like some high fives, some like whatever this is, clapping emoji.
That's a clap. That's definitely a clap.
Thank you. What is this thing that I'm doing?
BA-ons, did you? 2-1, wasn't it?
BA-ons in applied clapping and theology. So Wayne and Ruth will be joining us shortly, but I can just imagine what's playing out in that. Go on, do an impression of what Ruth's doing now, Louise.
Wayne, oh Wayne,
what are you doing to me, Wayne?
Why didn't you know?
I hate Dom.
Oh Wayne, Dom, what are you doing?
But Pastor Wayne and Ruth, we've been kind of tracking with them for some time now.
Yeah.
For those of you who have been in the AC UK for some time, you remember Next Sessions. I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago when Pastor Wayne and Ruth came and spoke to us at one of our conferences, and it was just a really great time with them. They just slotted right in. Ruth has a profound prophetic gift. She gave me such a powerful prophetic word. I still think about it. I still pray into it. It was probably one of the most formative words anyone's ever spoken over me. And Wayne, it just has this kind of amazing ability to kind of organize and to build, doesn't he? It's just incredible.
Absolutely brilliant. I love this. Rachel Willard's commented, "Get the coffee in quick." Yeah,
Australians like their coffee.
They do love their coffee. They make good coffee, don't they?
They do. Well, I don't know. I don't drink coffee, to be honest. They make good crocodiles. I know that, Australians. But, it's so good to have them in the room. And the reason that we were really keen to try and get them in tonight is because, in case you haven't noticed, the world is kind of crazy just out there. And the last year has been a wild ride for everybody. But I think in the church, it's been something else, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has, absolutely.
I think, part of one of the fundamental values of church is gathering and community. And in many ways, it feels like that has been stripped away from us.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
We lead Sunny Hill Church on the south coast of the UK, and we haven't met now for 56 Sundays in a physical location. Yeah. Wow. And I remember the last Sunday we were meeting, I said, "Guys, there's a chance we won't be meeting next week, but in about 2 or 3 weeks, we'll be back in the room." You can see me flexing my prophetic muscle with that one. So and give it 2 or 3 weeks, we'll be back to normal.
And we're with pre-packaged biscuits. So I remember we did this video about pre-packaged biscuits.
And sterilizer.
And we're going to prop the doors open so you don't have to touch them.
It's not sterilizer, is it? Sanitizer.
Sanitizer.
Okay. Is that the same thing?
Same-ish.
Doesn't matter. But 56 weeks later, here we are. As a church locally, we're gearing up to start meeting again on Easter Sunday at 4 locations. But I know that we're seeing now, as the NLT and the AC UK kind of risk assessments coming into relaunch gatherings. So we're moving in that direction. And the reason that it's really great that we've got Pastor Wayne and Ruth with us here, first of all, they're wise, they're prophetic, they've got so much experience in leadership. But also in Australia, they're a few months ahead of us they're also
ahead of us anyway, aren't they?
What do you mean by that?
Like they're already in tomorrow.
Okay.
Like effectively, it's Monday morning.
That is true. Yeah.
So they're already in the future.
Well, hopefully we can.
So
ask
we're going to
Wayne
be
and Ruth.
talking to people from the future.
Well, let's ask them the lottery numbers as well as the weather forecast for tomorrow, shall we? But I mean, it's kind of cool because they're a few months ahead of us nationally in terms of how they're coming out of lockdown and COVID. Yeah. And I think their first physical gathering, we'll let them talk about it, was in December. And we had a chat with them the other day, and they're already starting to see some trends play out. And we've been to Australia. We've seen them kind of in their own context. Phenomenal church that they lead, Resound Church. Preached there this morning, which was awesome sauce. But what's kind of interesting is Australia is more closely, I guess, what would you say, culturally to the UK than America. So I think a lot of the things that they're learning, we could really glean from. Now, of course, it isn't a direct kind of take. We can't just go, yeah, let's just do that. But I'm hoping tonight that they'll be able to speak into some of the stuff they're seeing and how we can kind of, but let us know you're in the room anyways. This is a live event tonight, isn't it? Which is cool.
It is live and proved by the fact that we had some slight technological hiccups early on.
Does it class as a technological like hiccup when it's a time, which is like something you can't do anything about?
That's true.
That's just on me. I think that's poor communication and organisation on my behalf. Yeah, this is why you should have done it, Luby. Or I could just play Wayne and Ruth.
No, don't do that.
No, don't do that. But because this is live, and the reason we want to do it live is because we don't just want this to be like a episode that you watch. We want it to be kind of an experience that you participate in. We want to hear your thoughts, observations, and also any questions that you might have. That now, obviously, we may not. Thank you. Someone's loving the hat. Oh, it's Sam Mead. Thank you, Sam. You like that? Basically, my hair's a bit long. I need a post-COVID cut, but I'm not there yet, so I'm wearing a cap. But yeah, if you've got any questions or anything like that, it would be great to hear from you. And we're going to welcome them shortly. So, Louise, do you want to pray for all of the leaders watching tonight? And by the way, well done for getting this far. It's been crazy, isn't it? People are hard to lead at the best of times, really, but I think the last 12 months has been exceptionally difficult as we've tried to rejig kind of how we do mission and ministry and stuff in a new world. So we celebrate you, we applaud you tonight, we champion you, and this is really, this tonight's experience is the NLT's, I guess, not gift, but it's their way of trying to resource and equip leaders within the AC UK to really get an insight as to what the future may hold for the church. Yeah, definitely. So let's come to it with that mindset tonight. Yeah,
okay, I'll pray. Father God, Lord God, we're just so grateful for the honor that it is to lead your people, Jesus. And we gather tonight as people who lead churches or who lead areas of churches or who have a desire to know more about leading churches. And Jesus, we just so know that the church is precious to you. The church is your bride, Jesus. And we're so grateful that we get to co-labor with you in leading it, Jesus. And so, God, we just need your wisdom. We need your wisdom like never before as we continue in these crazy days, Jesus. God, would you just help us? Would you help us as leaders to encourage one another, to lift one another up? Jesus, would you just bring a unity in the leadership of the apostolic churches across the UK, across the globe, Jesus? Would we just be united in the pursuit of following you and your purposes, Jesus? And would you reveal to us what it is that you've uniquely purposed each one of our churches to become? Would we be sensitive to the leading of your spirit, not lifting exact models, Jesus, but that you would just reveal to us principles from this conversation that would be useful to us in our own settings, Lord God. We just give you this time and ask that you would lead us in your name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Well, just to say, before we bring Pastor Wayne and Ruth into the room, we can see that there are people from Nigeria watching. So I don't know how you say welcome in Nigerian. Do you want to give it a go, Louise? I heard you're quite good at Nigerian.
No, not so much.
There's people from Brazil watching. We love the fact that you're tuning in with us tonight. You are most welcome. Oh, so good. And we're going to invite Pastor Wayne and Ruth to come into the room. So let's give them a round of applause. Pastor Wayne and Ruth.
We're awake.
You're awake.
I think we're awake.
Am I awake? I think so.
Well, Wayne, me and you are cat buddies tonight, so that's awesome. But let me just say, first of all, on behalf of my wife, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. She really dropped the ball on that one. Normally she manages the administrative things in this house, but she totally dropped the ball on this. So I'm sorry. So what is playing out? What is the time where you are? Where are you and what's the time?
The time now is 5:49. I got my first text at 5:06 from Dom Bird, and I thought, hang on, the alarm's not due for another 45 minutes yet. We're going to get up, have a shower, have a shave, get dressed.
I was going to say,
it was
Ruth,
all planned.
Ruth, were you planning to have a shave? Were you in preparation for this conversation tonight? That's amazing.
No, I wasn't planning to shave.
Yeah,
Just maybe doing my hair a bit better than I have.
You look amazing. I wish I looked that good when I woke up for like 10 minutes. You've had.
Thank you.
Can I just say, was our kind of hunch as to how things were playing out in the hotel room, were we semi-accurate with that?
No.
I just got up and went, oh, great, we're on in about 5 minutes. Be wonderful. That's
An
great.
opportunity to serve Jesus and his church. How amazing. How blessed we are.
Why wouldn't we just get out of bed?
Yeah, that's it was something like that, wasn't it? Yeah,
it was really
And I
fun.
thought, knowing Dom, he's just playing games with me. He's just, and I couldn't believe that we'd got it wrong, because I normally get these things right. I just didn't know your time had changed. Why would you change a week earlier than us?
Well, just a confession, when we initially spoke about doing this, I remember you saying on Easter weekend was less preferable because you have an hour's change, but it didn't. It didn't make me. I didn't even think that would affect this weekend's thing. So I really dropped the ball. Oh. But again, I just would like to place blame with my wife, because that's what great husbands do, isn't it? That's what I've heard. So, apologies, but thank you for being available. Like, you've got such a busy diary, and you've been so kind to us personally, but as a movement. You're some of our closest friends around the world, and we love seeing what you guys are modeling and what you guys are doing. And we, having seen it, sometimes we have speakers on in this forum and we haven't been to where they minister and we haven't seen what they do on the ground. But obviously we and a few other leaders in the AC UK have had that opportunity, and you guys are just the real deal.
Yeah.
And we honor you. We honor you for your investment, for your sacrifice, for your heart for people. We see it. We've seen it. We've seen it not just on a movement level, but even cross movement. The way that, like Ruth in particular, you connect with a number of women within our movement just to help support and lift up. And so we want to start and just, tonight, just honor you. So thank you for all that you invest into our movement. But just as a way of starting, can you help us understand?
Do you think that makes up for him waking us up so early? I mean, we were all sorted to go, and he's just laid it on thick, thinking that somehow that compensates. I don't think it compensates.
Anyway, keep going. Sorry, Tom, that was really nice.
Did it work a little bit, Wayne? Do you feel slightly more loving towards me now? Did it work a little bit? Great cap, you're looking great. Love the glasses, love the hair, love the shirt. You guys are so beautiful. You're just wonderful and amazing, and we can't speak highly enough. Anyways, let's get into it tonight. Help us understand. Obviously, you lead a movement, Acts Global. So you've seen the effect of COVID across the nation, in which you bring kind of oversight to in terms of the churches. And you also lead a local church, Resound Church. Tell us a little bit of your experience. So just to give you a bit of framework for tonight, we want to journey past, present, future. And I want to do that within the next hour. So let's start with the past year. What has it kind of looked like for you as a church? What have been the challenges? What have you seen over the last year?
Sure. I'll give you a brief overview of the movement's experience. And that is, statistically, financially, the movement has stayed about the same. Now, there were fluctuations, slightly up a percent, down a percent, but in a normal year across the movement, we would experience that anyway. So financially, generally, we stayed about the same, which is really amazing, considering many churches would only have received income in person and wouldn't be receiving it online. They pivoted, took their income that way. And it's been quite amazing to see how that's worked its way out. Our local church, we didn't meet from, when was it? March. And then we got together again in December.
Yeah.
And during that time, we couldn't have small groups or anything. We were restricted, 5K limit, an hour out of our house. It was like prison. You guys, I mean, Dom in particular deserves that, but for the rest of the world, you know, we were being punished for some reason, and so that was a challenge. As far as our churches go across the country, most people report that that the church has come through okay. Anecdotally, though, as I talk to other leaders, they would say about 20% of the church has not returned, and it seems like won't be returning. And in-person services are down to about 60% of what they were previously. Across the country, it's been a different in different states, but we're still going through the process. We lead 2 local churches, one in Geelong. I would say attendance has grown there by 30% over the last 12 months, and income has grown by 30%.
Can I just say, have you got an English Northern man leading that church?
A failed cricketer, I believe he is. Oh. Yeah. Johnny Kettle. He's.
I hope he watches this.
Yeah. He obviously chose to stay in Australia. I'm not sure why. It could have something to do with his now wife and children, but so they're doing a great job. And then at Resound, we've stayed about the same, though our in-person attendance is down. You're probably down to about 60% of what it was prior. And when we say attendance is down 60%, that doesn't mean only 60% have returned. It's just the regular attendance has dropped off a little bit. So we're probably still got the same reach, but just less regular. So that's a brief overview.
That's really helpful. So you went into lockdown in March. And Australia started to come out, but where you are geographically with the local church of Resound, you were kind of pushed back into quite a strict lockdown. So you didn't have a physical gathering between March and December, is that right?
That's correct, yes. Then we met for 3 weeks in December, and then went online through Christmas, New Year, and really resumed properly in January. And so just getting started in many ways.
Yeah. Okay. The 3 weeks in December, we did soft opening, I'd say, where we were still pre-recording our service and then had it in service. But the whole purpose of that was just to do it for 3 weeks softly. If people didn't come back, it was okay, but we were just working out how we were going to go forward. And then from January, the second week in January, we started our online service, so we were live from January. So
I don't know if you can see Scott Wellard's comment there. He's a fellow Australian, and he can absolutely do one right there. You see, I'm not sure who he's
good on you, Scotty. We love Scott and Rach.
And the only difference is my cap is because of my baldness, not because of the amount of hair I've got. And the light was shining on my head, and I thought you didn't need an additional light. So,
it's all good. It's all good. Anything that lights us up. So on that basis, what you were talking about, obviously within the movement, you've got churches that are more tech able, tech savvy, and you've got churches that are less tech savvy. It doesn't make them worse. It's just the fact that there are different gifts in the house. How has COVID affected those churches differently? Because I'm guessing those who have been able to get online more easily may have been able to maintain or not decline too much, or maybe even seen growth, whereas other churches who have struggled to get it together online, how have you seen that play out?
I'm really, really proud of our churches and the leaders. Just watching our smaller churches do online has been extraordinary. But what's been awesome is how some of the larger churches have really helped the smaller ones. And I know for us at Resound, our musicians did a lot of pre-recorded music. And then a lot of our littler churches, they just grabbed hold of our music and used it rather than trying to bring their musicians and things like that. A lot of our sermons and things like that were being used by different churches so that it gave them a break rather than them having to do them all the time. But on the majority, most of them got online, did a live. There was a number of them too that did Zoom church, and were able to gather their people via Zoom. So every one of them did something, and for me, I just think, well done, that they have worked so hard to connect the people, making sure the people still feel like they're part of a body of Christ. And and we didn't lose any of our churches, which is phenomenal. But we've come back and we're all back now, and we haven't lost any. Nobody's folded and said that's it. So
there's definitely a vast difference between production quality, but the reality is, especially for those smaller churches, to maintain community was the key, and so the focus was less on production quality. I think where people have been able to really launch themselves online and reach out, there's been growth, because people have been reached that wouldn't normally be reached as a result of their efforts online, which I think is a great idea.
That's great.
That's great. Yeah, I mean,
we've got one church in New South Wales, in Blacktown, and their community in service isn't huge, but their reach outside now, because of their online presence, is phenomenal. And they're right smack bang in the middle of an Islamic area. Wow. And they have had so many Islamic people now watching their service, and are still watching their service every Sunday, and are connecting in. But because they can't come into an in-service, they can't do that. But now they're really part of the church there, and are loving the church, and are loving the online services. It's amazing. And so for them, their reach just exploded, because they stepped out of their comfort zone.
I think Kerry Ann, the pastor, is online with us this morning. I've seen a comment from her earlier.
Hello, Kerry Ann.
Kerry Ann's up early. I just wonder where her husband is. He's probably still sleeping. He didn't get a text from Dom at 5:05.
Wayne, if you give me his number, I'm happy to call him. No problem.
You'd get a good response.
Yeah.
Well, you say they minister at a church in New South Wales, which makes me ask, what was wrong with the old South Wales that you needed to make a new one? That's all I'm asking on behalf of the Welsh people.
Actually, they also have a group of houses called Breakthrough Houses. Wow. Unfortunately for them, last week I think they had to evacuate the houses. Rick is sleeping for sure. There you go. They had to evacuate the houses as a result of the floods that many of you would have seen. And those houses are for emergency accommodation for mostly women and families that are at risk of domestic violence. They do a fantastic job.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
My goodness. Yeah, I had a question, just because you kind of linked there to the fact that there's the community of the church is strengthened. And I guess, that's been one of the struggles for many churches, is how do you build community when you can't actually be with people? And as much as the Sunday broadcast is part of what we as a church exist to do, what ways have you found community growing in your churches?
Yeah, good.
Well, we, through that period of time, couldn't meet, obviously. So the way we just built community was, we had what we call nurture groups in our church. So every person in our church was divided up into a group, and somebody was there allocated to look after them. So it might have been anything from 5 to 10 people. But we did a lot of, like all of you are doing, online Zooms and online prayer meetings, and whatever you can think of to bring the group together. But I think the thing that kept the people so closely knitted was the care from within the church, not from the leadership, but from the individuals actually rising up. And we just had so many people sending things in the mail, or Uber Eats, delivering food to people. Donuts was a huge thing. We've got a shop called Daniel's Donuts, and I think they just would have loved us, because we were just sending donuts all over the place. But the whole purpose was for people to know they were still connected and loved and appreciated. And I don't if anybody in our church at Resound said that they weren't loved and cared for through the pandemic, well, I would say it's your own fault, because we did everything we could to connect them.
Very compassionate this morning.
Very compassionate. It's really early. There's no filter at all.
She's had no coffee.
No coffee.
We're in a hotel room, no coffee. So it's like I'm
like
in the
this
cage
person.
with a lion at the moment, you know.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is that people didn't come back and say they weren't cared for. We didn't have that. We actually had people coming back saying how much they felt loved and nurtured, and so we're grateful for that. And I know a lot of our other churches around the nation picked up the same thing and have testified back with the same results, that people felt loved and cared for. It takes a lot of work. It's a lot of extra effort.
And
But yeah. But I said, because we love
Weight Watchers, we've got a corporate membership with Weight Watchers too now.
we love Cadbury's chocolate, and yeah, and so I think I sent 90 blocks of Cadbury's chocolate in the mail.
Nice.
To families or people.
You guys sent us, didn't you?
Well, yeah.
We sent it to you, Lou, not to Dom.
What's that? Sorry.
We sent it to you, Lou, and the boys, but not to Dom.
He didn't see it. He didn't get.
Oh, good.
What are you talking about? What box? What box are you talking about?
Yeah. The funny thing is, Lou looks like she didn't eat the chocolate. Dom looks like he ate the whole lot. So I'm not sure what happened there.
It's not even funny. I can't even see my feet right now.
Richard loved that one.
Yeah, that was a unique laugh in the background.
Yeah. You know what?
Some of the chocolates melted because they were like 6 weeks.
Unfortunately, Wayne and Ruth have had to go due to poor connection, and it's just unfortunate because we were really enjoying that conversation with them, but they've had to leave just because they're so tired.
I was talking.
I'm sorry about that. Carry on, Ruth.
No, it's good. I'm done now. Thank you.
Okay. Well, on the basis, like obviously, Ruth, it sounds like you've got off on the fun side of bed today, which means that obviously we can pitch some really fun questions, and you're going to give us good answers, brutal answers, which we like. Now, obviously, anyone who knows you two, you're very different leaders. The way you lead, the way you feel. I mean, I think it's amazing. I think it's brilliant the way that God has brought you two together, because you are so different in so many ways. I would say that Wayne is more pragmatic, very kind of organized, strategic, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying you're not these things when I say these things about. Whereas I would say, Ruth, you're much more people oriented. You are more prophetic, which generally means as well you kind of feel on a deep level. And so obviously I would think that coming into a season like this of challenge, Wayne would have held it very pragmatically. It is what it is. We can only do what we can do. You know, we can't do anything more. We just got to leave it with God. It's his church. Whereas Ruth, I imagine that you would carry a lot more of the heartache, the pain associated, not just with not seeing people because you'll feel that, but also the rumors that you're hearing coming back to you about people who may be leaving church, people who may be struggling in church, and you all feel responsible. So can you just help? Because obviously there's a whole spectrum of leaders watching this tonight who are different, but specifically to the feeler, the one who carries this really heavily emotionally, what would you say to them? How would you encourage them? And how would you kind of instruct them to manage that stuff?
Yeah, for me, it was really hard. I'll admit that. There was many times that I cried, just sat and started to cry, because I am very, very much people orientated and love people. And it's not that Wayne doesn't love people. He does love people. He just thinks about it very differently to me. And you're right, everything you said about him, that's how he was. So the best way that I could handle it and handle the way I was I needed to then reach out. It was like the minute that I got to that point, I couldn't sit there anymore and allow myself to keep slipping and slipping and slipping. So I would just pick up the phone and ring one person after the other and see how they were going, reaching out. That's why I sat down and wrote the letters, because it was like being able to write somebody a letter, a heartfelt letter with a block of chocolate, was a way that I could make, I guess, connection with those people, but at the same time, stop thinking about how I was, woe is me, everything's bad, it's not good, and that kind of feeling, to no, God, I'm not going to slip, and allow myself to get to this point where I can't get up and keep going. And so, just tried my best to reach out the best way I can. I organised a lot of Zoom catch-ups with girls, so I had them all on, and we'd be able to chat and have a good laugh and things like that, just to continue to help people connect, but for me to connect. I knew if I was feeling bad, because I'm an up person, if I was like that, I thought, man, what about all these other people that aren't the up people? Where are they at? And so it was just doing that. But it was hard, I'll admit it. I felt it. And probably even coming out the other side, I'm even grieving now for the ones that haven't come back, that have blatantly said, I don't want to do church anymore. That's really hard.
Well, we'll definitely come on to that very shortly. But I mean, like, I don't know how vulnerable you want to be, but have you had in the last 12 months any what's the point kind of moments where you're just like, what's the point to all this? Especially, because we're human, so we're not speaking down to our congregation or anything, but we know the fickle nature of humanity, don't we? That like we were talking about it at church this morning on Palm Sunday today, when Jesus enters Jerusalem, everyone's saying, Hosanna, coming out in droves to celebrate the coming Messiah. But in less than a week, the same people are shouting, crucify him, which just speaks to the kind of the state and the condition of humanity. And as leaders, often we're caught in the crosshairs of that kind of fallout. Like, have you had any moments like that where you're just like, is there any point to us doing this? Because it feels like, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back kind of scenario.
I think there's definitely times where Ruth got to that point, because I had to listen to her. And I mean that respectfully, in the sense that, as you said, she felt deeply. There are times where she was reaching out, didn't get a response from people. And while it's our responsibility and our call to touch and to reach people, it does help when you get a response. And there'd be times where I sent so-and-so some chocolates and nothing. They've not said anything. Do you think they got them? Or, and so that hurt deeply, I would say, at times. I think there was no doubt. I'm sure I heard times where you said, I don't know why I'm doing this. It's not making any difference. So there's definitely times of frustration and disappointment. I suppose, I reset differently to Ruth. So, even whatever the result is with the church coming back, my attitude is, that's great. Let's just consider it a church plant, and we start with whatever we've got and build from there. Whereas Ruth still mourns the loss that we may have experienced, because, we don't know in every circumstance, much more deeply than I do. So different for us both, but there's no doubt she carried it.
Well, Rachel, go on. Sorry, Ruth.
Sorry, but in the midst of all that, I really pressed. I know this sounds super spiro, but we're talking to the leaders, and that's what we're meant to be. Yeah, exactly. But I actually really, really did press into God, and I read the Word more than I ever read. I read the Bible twice. Right through, I was determined that I was going to come out stronger and deeper than I was before, and that I was not going to be a shallow person that came out questioning and wondering where God was in the midst of everything, or questioning and wondering whether God was even there for us and for the world, and why would this happen. I made a decision. I'm not going to question why this is all happening. It's happening. We can't change it. So God, in the midst of how I feel, I'm going to you, and I'm going to go really, really deep with you. And so, you know, I listened to more podcasts than I ever had. I read the Bible more than I ever did. I was just like determined that I was going to come out, I guess, shining rather than, you know, struggling.
Yeah.
And I believe I did. I really do believe I did. So
that's so good. And we've got Dave Ray, who's just saying in the chat, he's saying, do you want my address for Cadbury's by mail? Like, he's happy to give that. He's happy to share that with you. And I'm sure
thank you.
What's your preference, Dave? Krispy Kremes or Cadbury's? Because they're happy to do anything. So that's great. Rachel Wellard's got a great question up. And I think, Ruth, you've spoken into this on your behalf. But Wayne, obviously, is a different type of leader, because there's going to be leaders like you watching tonight. What's been a specific personal challenge that you've faced as a leader, and how have you overcome it?
I suppose for me, it's interesting. I think that the challenge the church has faced through this COVID period is not a great deal different to the challenge it faced prior to the COVID period. Mm-hmm. And that is our Western Christianity still isn't what it ought to be. All that happened is the crisis has pointed out the problems we've got. I think it made it clearer to us the significant challenge the church in the West has to move towards discipleship as opposed to entertainment. People were happy to fulfill their spiritual obligation by attending church. They wanted a church that was riveting. They wanted something that was enjoyable. All the things you'd want from a movie. But I don't think they really wanted in-depth discipleship. I don't know that everyone wanted to experience the change that the gospel ought to bring about in our lives. And so for me, as we've gone through the whole COVID thing, I'm an introvert. So being locked up at home, it wasn't a great deal of difficulty for me. It was not hard. I enjoyed, even when we were doing the pre-recordings, I'd pre-record on Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever. Someone else would do all of the work, and it'd turn up on Sunday morning when I'm at home watching. And so that wasn't a problem for me. But I do carry the weight of all the churches, and I know that it wasn't as simple for everyone as it was for us in some senses. The real challenge for me is, how do we make the church more effective? And that weight and pressure existed before COVID. I think what's happened through COVID is, and I say this respectfully, I think some who were lukewarm became cold. I think that's probably an advantage, because we're able to see clearly where they're at in their spiritual walk, and it's not a criticism, it's an opportunity. It's if we know where someone's at, we're able to address it more easy than if someone appears to be going well. And so for me, the big challenge is, how do we reshape the church? How do we change its reputation? I mean, you know, one of the frustrations is, there are some sectors of the church that resist the restrictions, that wanted to go against the government's guidelines. And I'm thinking, they're not doing the reputation of the church good. The church should be known for its love. The church should be known for its compassion. The church should be known for being hope givers, whereas some sections of the church were actually protesting, jumping up and down about the restrictions, as if the most important thing for them is to gather on Sunday morning face to face. It's not the most important thing. The most important thing is showing the love of Christ. And we ought to be known for that. You know, that's what the church across the nation ought to be known for. It's exactly what Jesus expected us to do. So a bunch of different struggles, but they are strategic, longer term, and I suppose less emotional.
Yeah. It's great. I mean, you
Yes.
kind of started to speak into the future and present stuff there. So I think we'll take a literal 10-second break. And then when we come back, we're going to jump and unpack that further with regards to the future.
Just so you know, Dom, it's like 6:20. We're about to come online.
You ready now?
Are you ready? Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll let you in after this little animation thing.
That'd be fantastic.
So it's so good because we're going to be joined by Wayne and Ruth today.
Just at the right time.
Exactly the time when they expected.
They'll be ready now.
So
Right
come on.
away. There they go.
What's that, shooting stars or something?
Down from above.
Okay, so brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing your heart and the context to which now we move into the second part of our conversation. And this is, although I said past, present, future, I think present and future kind of will sync together nicely because you've started to address it anyways. And I can see a few questions in there already about that. But I guess with regards to present, just as we start there, I'd be really keen to know what are the biggest things that have surprised you by coming back into the room?
You want to go?
I think the biggest surprise is some people whom we consider to be long-term committed and loyal to the local church who have still yet to return. And we wouldn't question their commitment to Christ, but they're still not at a place where they're willing to return to an in-person meeting, despite the fact that, you know, we don't have any COVID in the community. Now, I know Scott Wellard earlier made some comment about some cases. There's, I think, 2 cases in Queensland. And the rest of the cases we have in the country are all in hotel quarantine. They're overseas travellers. So there is no risk. And yet people with common sense, you know, stable health, they're still wondering whether or not they should return. Yet they'll go to the movies, they'll go to the shopping centre, they'll go to work, and yet somehow, some way, coming to church on Sunday morning is something that they're not doing it. I think that's probably been quite a surprise. It's not a surprise in that, you know, such a long period of being out of the habit is certainly a factor, but it's been a surprise. What about you?
Yeah, I think saying that has been a surprise. But then the other great surprise on the other side, like the positive surprise, is that I've seen some people shock me where they were the fringe dwellers prior to COVID. But coming back into in-services, they've suddenly said, I want to serve. We've got one couple that were, I would say, fringe, even considering leaving us because they just didn't feel like they fitted, came back after COVID, and he's now on our filming team, filming the services. She's joined our children's ministry team, and I've just gone, wow, what happened? Another couple who, you know, were coming every now and then prior are now back in force, and they're on our door, and I'm like, wow, what happened here? So there's been some great positives as well, but Wayne's one where, you know, we've got one couple who were with us for 44 years and just haven't been back, and for all different reasons, and I'm not even sure if they're going to come back. So
the other surprise is probably people who you would say were lapsed Christians who have started coming back to church. You know, at a time where there's a good reason probably not to, these people who haven't been in church for many years have suddenly turned up, and they're people known to us who may have attended the church 10, 15 years ago who, for whatever reason, stopped attending, and yet have suddenly, all of a sudden, turned it all around and recommitted themselves to church attendance. They would say they were always committed to Christ, but they've recommitted themselves to regular church attendance. It's been quite surprising, hasn't it?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of different surprises. I think the one thing we have found, though, is people don't want a long service anymore. We've got they have really been conditioned to 1 hour.
Are you saying like you shouldn't speak too long? Does that affect people somehow?
And I think it's made us.
Just wondering.
Yeah. So
No reference to
conditioned
this morning. No reference.
shorter services because they were used to watching online, and after an hour, it's like, okay, we're done. We're going to go and make coffee, or we're going to go and do this. And so we even found coming back into church, we're very mindful of that, and we're not restricting the flow. Like there's been weeks where we haven't stuck to an hour and we've gone longer, but we had to introduce it carefully back so people didn't sit in the room and go, oh my goodness, this is going forever, I need my coffee or whatever. And also we were very mindful we're online as well, and sorry, online didn't change. You still had that same feeling watching it, so you didn't want to watch it for an hour and 15, an hour and a half. You wanted to stick to what was on. So just getting the balance, that's probably been a tricky thing to have.
I think Louise got a question, but just because of that cough there, Ruth, you're not actually in a quarantine hotel, are you? That's not where you're brought.
No, it just got all.
We can't get that off from you, can we? On the internet.
It's the morning.
I haven't got COVID. I haven't
had a coffee yet, poor Ruth.
Her normal routine is to wake up, her husband goes, makes her coffee, and then she lies in bed and listens to the Bible or does a Bible reading. And then, about 7:30, 8 o'clock, she starts to move from the bed. I think it's something like that. So what you're getting is still, that where you're getting to the end of your sleep routine, it's still coming out.
We love what we're getting.
It's so good. Yeah, I got a question. You kind of alluded to a little bit, Wayne, where you talked about that there were certain people within the church, not your church necessarily, but within the church, that had a very different idea about when the church should open and shouldn't ever shut. And I guess here in the UK, we're finding the same thing. And now that the restrictions are lifted, actually in this lockdown, we've not had to shut the doors of the church, have we? In the current lockdown that we've been in England, we've not had to completely shut the doors of church. And yet most churches have. There's now this big question about when do we open? And certain churches, we're going next week. Other churches not quite ready yet. A lot of people still think we're going too soon. Potentially you have people in your church thinking the same. How did you decide when was the right time for you to move back into a physical gathering?
Sure. I think the most important thing is the overall reputation of the church in the community. I'm not just talking about the local church, but the church across the nation. And we carry the responsibility for the reputation of Christ in our nation by the way we conduct ourselves locally. And so it's a matter of reading the climate in the community and ensuring that we're not early adopters when it comes to returning to in-person services. Because the early adopters are actually aggravating the most vulnerable in society who are, when I say vulnerable, they may not be vulnerable because of their health, but they're vulnerable because of their mindset. And those are people that are more likely to be reached for Christ if we exercise wisdom, grace, and discernment in the way that we connect with them. And so for me, we all know the church is not the meeting on Sunday morning. It's the community it's the called out ones. We're all the called out ones, and as we all also know, the church around the world has suffered persecution over centuries and has been forced not to meet many times. I think what we need to do is exercise great wisdom, not be seen as an early adopter, which is going to aggravate the community, but exercise. I think, if there's one thing the church should be known for, it's love. And if that means us foregoing what may be our right for a while so that we can express love to the community, I think that's a great thing. I know Andy Stanley in the US made a very early call, said his church wouldn't be meeting again until 2021. And he had positive and negative reaction. But I think, the community that is in there in Atlanta appreciated a church that was exercising wisdom in an attempt to decrease the possibility of the virus spreading more. For me, if as soon as we demand our rights, there's a problem. I think, you know, Paul said, the Apostle Paul said, you know, it's better to be wronged. We're better not to demand our rights, but to exercise wisdom in the way that we go about what we do. So for me, it was an easy decision. We've just got to go slowly, go carefully, and keep in mind that the larger community we're trying to reach runs at a particular temperature that we need to gauge to ensure that we're not hurting them by gathering together too early. I think, does that cover the question, do you think?
Yeah,
Definitely.
I think the reason people want to rush back to getting into in-service is because our barometer has always been about numbers on seats, people in church service on a Sunday. And that's what we've always determined on how healthy our church is, on how many people turn up on a Sunday means that we can then say, oh, yeah, we've got this many people. And so much of who we are related to the Sunday morning service or the Sunday night service whenever people had that service. And it put a lot of pressure on us as leaders to go, oh, my goodness, you know, we need the Sunday morning service so we can get back to the barometer, so we can get back to knowing how many people are relating to our church now. And for older leaders like myself, that has been so conditioned in me that it was like, I need to get back so that I can see how many people are there, so I can see if we've still got a church, you know. Fear was in me to drive. The truth is that we can no longer look at the church service as our barometer. It is just a service. It is part of who we are. So we have small groups. We have a service on a Sunday. We may have a service on a Sunday night. We may have something different. Across the board is who Resound or who Acts Global churches are. They're no longer about a Sunday morning service, so that when you only get 60% of your people back into the church service, you're no longer sitting there going, oh, nobody's coming back, but you sit there and go, no, it's okay, because so many are online. So many went to small group through the week. They're still connected. They're still part of our service. It's just a different barometer now. And if you can get that into your head that it's a different barometer, suddenly the fear goes. And suddenly you can be there on a Sunday morning and look out and go, oh, awesome. These people are here today, and we're ministering live to these group, and these were online, and these were over here. And it's like it's taken a pressure off thinking, oh, no, we haven't got enough people. Resound hasn't dropped in numbers, but the in-service has. So I could get really depressed about that. But instead, I'm like, no, Resound hasn't dropped in numbers. We're still relating and reaching out and doing our best to disciple this group of people. It's just different now.
Just one final thing, and probably this is a little bit more straight, so apologise if I offend you. But too many people are going back to church for the sake of their own ego. And I'm not talking about the people attending church, but the leaders. They're trying to get back because they have a psychological deficiency that demands they get to speak in front of people. And people with an evangelistic gift are probably more likely to do that. They actually need the live crowd to feel good about themselves. Again, that's selfish. What we need to be doing is what's best for the community, and our own psychological needs need to be put aside. We need to accept that. We need to see those issues and put them to the side, and then do what's best for the community. So that offends anyone, sorry about that. But the reputation of Christ should be uppermost in our thinking.
No, that's good. And just as a kind of follow-up to that, so are you saying that your intention isn't to try and gather everybody back? Are you quite content to sort of have those online numbers and not try and persuade people or journey people back into the room? Or is that part of what you're doing as well? But it's, how do you manage the tension of persuading or journeying people back into the room without persuading them?
Here's £10. Come to church, I'll give you a tenner.
Yeah, kind of recognizing that everybody is in a different place, and it is
I think,
factor, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think, there are some people who only reach online, and simply because of location, that's true. They may be in a place where they could never attend physically, and so we want to reach those people. There will be some people whose commitment and habits have changed and will stay online simply because it's easier to get up at a reasonable time and watch online, and there'll be others that will return. I think there is a difficult tension there.
Yeah.
There is no doubt. I was speaking to a guy just last night. We're in a different location, and he said they're doing their online stuff sporadically now because they found the number of people attending in person was down. So what they said was, we'll be doing special events online, which may be once a month, as opposed to every week. And his goal was to get more people in person to his church service. I don't know that that's the best strategy, and they'll work that out. But for us, our goal is to build our online attendance. Our goal is to build our in-person attendance. And our goal is to plant new locations. And we're going to do all three at once. The rate or the pace at which we grow may be different in each different forum, but the goal is still the same, and that is to reach people for Christ. Everyone, whether in person or online, each have different motivations and different levels of spiritual vitality. And so we seek to help them grow wherever they're at to wherever they need to go towards. So it is a tension. There's no doubt about that. But just because they're online doesn't mean they're not spiritually healthy. And just because they're in person doesn't mean that they're spiritually healthy either. So it's going to be an interesting journey, but the challenge is the same.
And I know not all churches can do this, but something I heard interesting is, and it's something I found myself doing when I was trying to preempt what is it going to look like coming out of COVID season, is that you try to proportion how much of the percentage of our resource and energy is going to go to in the room, and how much of our resource and energy is going to go to online ministry and mission. And I was thinking probably early on, it'll probably be 70 in the room, 30% online. And I heard Craig Rochelle, he leads the largest church in America, and it's not just the large, it's a brilliant church. It's a healthy church. It's a church planting church. It's not just large centrally, it's large across the nation and the world. His observation was early doors, before it was cool to be online, the church just had this philosophy that we're going to be 100% in the room and we're going to be 100% online.
Yeah.
Now, I know not every church can do that, but surely what this COVID season has done is it's made us aware that there's a mission field where there are people that will never come into our buildings, that will only be reached through effective online mission and ministry. And so therefore, let's not just play with it. Let's really go full tilt after this, 100% online, 100% in the room. And I guess that leads me on. I think I don't want to breeze over it because there is kind of a really good question in the chat room. And I would love you, just before we jump into that topic and move into the future and begin to land this plane, David Mitchell is saying, basically, reading between the lines, saying, yeah, Wayne, all that lovey-dovey stuff is great. That's basically what he's saying. It's a nice idea. The church has got to love the community. Therefore, we'll just stay and hide out and we'll just watch church on TV. But surely central to the church's identity is this call to gathering, to koinonia, to fellowship, to participation. And so, if we are trying to protect people from potential death, then surely the early church would never have met if that was the mantra. So how would you respond, just in a nutshell, because I don't want to spend too much time on, I want to move into the future, but how would you respond to that?
I'm happy to. Ruth just asked me if she can respond, and then
I think we have to change our thought pattern about what is the church. The church is small groups. If the church is us, the individuals. So if we're going to handle that tension, if you've got a group of 10 people in one room and another group of 10 people and another group of 10 people in a room, from from your church, that's your church meeting together. So if the reason people are pushing to go back into the building and everybody rush back into the building is because they see the building as the church, and we can't say I am going to go to church. We are the church. So how do we say I'm going to the church? We should be saying I'm the church that's going to go and meet with a gathering of people, whatever that looks like, for the safety of other people. And if that means there's 5 people in a room that are going to grow together for a period of time, great, or online, or a greater gathering in a building. But we've got to remove this thought pattern that the church is going back to a big building and the church is the building, and unless you go to the building, you're not the church.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So,
I mean, for me, if it's critical to meet together for the well-being of the community, meaning the church community, that's fine. Don't publicize it. The community, the broader community, won't know that you're meeting, and you can still do those things as long as. I mean, for me, we do have an obligation to the broader community to stick within the laws and the rules and the expectations. There is a tension. There's no doubt about that. I know I've been criticised. I've had emails and all sorts of things saying, the church has got to stand up. When they say we couldn't meet, we should have met anyway, and all this sort of stuff. And I thought, so what's the point of that? It's just about our rights. Well, we lost our rights when we committed our life to Christ. If my actions deter from the reputation of Christ, that's a problem for me. My actions ought to promote Christ and his passion and his love and his care. And so there is a tension. But if I have to forego something I enjoy doing, then so be it. If it's critical to the well-being of the people that gather, which it isn't the majority of the time, then there are ways to do it discreetly so as we don't damage the broader reputation of Christ. And so it is a tension. I acknowledge that. And probably, I think you said lovey-dovey, Dom. I'm from lovey-dovey. We have all sorts of things going on in our country. We had a 5-day lockdown recently, and one church in particular chose to meet. Some of the people from our own church went to that church meeting, and they refused to wear masks. The police turned up. It was on the news. It was. But to me, all it did was it was a distraction. The people from the community looked at the church and thought, "Well, what's wrong with those losers? Why are they doing this?" The police were caught on camera trying to make sense of the whole thing with people, and they're saying, "Hey, listen, this is not just the church that's locked down. We're all locked down." And I thought that didn't help the church. They thought they were promoting Christ. I think they were actually decreasing the impact of Christ in our community as a result. So.
Yeah, well, many people agree within the room, but Susie Hitchens, she absolutely hates what you're saying right there. I can't even get it up.
She's really deleted.
Boom, there we go. She's going, no, disagree, which is fine. All are welcome to their thoughts. I've personally struggled with this journey as a leader. That's why I wanted to get the comments shown, because we don't want to hide from the stark reality that, everyone thinks differently about what the church should be doing. And I've really struggled for a number of reasons. Maybe you're right. Maybe on a deep level, there are some psychological defects in my head that want me to get back to the room with the wrong motives. And I often question that as a leader. Like, if somebody leaves church, am I sad because it's one less person coming to Sunny Hill? Or am I sad because I'm worried that they're going to wander from truth? And that's a real sobering question to consider. And if we're honest as leaders, it's often a hard thing to differentiate between what is godly concern and what is just egotistical kind of big church kind of mentality. Susie's taking it in the next step. Oh, it's up. Like, she's saying, shame on you, but then she laughs, so we know that it's all good in the hood.
But just with that though, don't get us wrong. Our heart is about the people, and our heart is about gathering people and wanting. Of course, I believe in the scripture that says that the brethren should dwell together, come together. I believe in that scripture that
Early morning.
Yeah, early morning. I believe in the scripture that says we're meant to gather together. So I love the big gathering. I love people coming together. I am so 100% for all of that. But at the same time, I don't ever want to put somebody else at risk or, be the one that's responsible for someone else's life because of my rights of saying I should be in the room, we should be open, all of that kind of thing. The time's coming. And just quickly too, if you think that I haven't followed up people that haven't come back, I have. And if people haven't been watching online and I know are struggling, oh my goodness, I'm on the phone, I'm talking to them, I'm meeting with them. And the excitement for me is when they have come back to gatherings because they've decided, no, I am going to come back. And now they're making that commitment back. So there's a real huge desire, but what we're trying to say is that we have to be people that are showing Jesus no matter what. And if you're not supposed to gather in a room, I think there's other ways to do it and need to take advantage. And we don't have to be so forthright in saying, right, everybody in the room, because we have to be together to worship Jesus. And if the government says we can't do that, well, blow the government, we follow God, and that's who we follow, and we're all going to the room, and then everybody gets COVID. Oh, fabulous. Well done, guys. I think there's a real place that we have to come to, but just make sure you get our hearts. We love the church and we love the gathering.
We get it. You hate the church, you hate physical gatherings. We get it. All right? Just live with us. We know what you're about. We get it. You just want to stay in and not see anyone ever again.
Just something more provocative. The West is known for its church gatherings. When we talk about the church in the West, it's about the church gatherings on Sunday. And yet the church has been in decline in the West for 30 or 40 years.
So true.
Where the church is growing is where the church is not known for its Sunday gatherings. It's known for its small groups. And that's in all the developing countries where they're winning people to Christ. And, I know the other day you mentioned about China and, what had happened there in the midst of persecution. I am less concerned about our gathering on Sunday. I'm more concerned about winning people to Christ and the church actually taking ground as opposed to losing ground. That's not to say there isn't ground taken, but it's not enough ground that's being taken, where it's sort of like the church in the West is like it's on an ocean liner. And unfortunately, whether we realize it or not, it's slowly sinking into the water. We just didn't realize it's getting lower and lower, and we're in big trouble unless we address the problem. And I don't say the problem is the gatherings. The problem is our model, our discipleship. There's a whole range of things to fix there.
Let's get into that if we can. And I'd like to just frame just really quickly just 3 measures that I think are helpful for leaders to consider when coming back out of lockdown. Is, I think, first of all, the community. And I think Wayne and Ruth have really well just spoken into that. So obviously the genuine health of the community is something. So, because I think I'm a closet Baptist, Wayne. I don't know if you know this, but I love 3 points and I love alliteration. I love it all. And I love voting on stuff as well. So I think I'm a closet Baptist. In fact, I'm married a Baptist, and she's clearly she's leading me astray. So I think I'm going to start a new movement called the Bapostolic Church. I think I've just decided that that's how we're going to do life from now on, the Bapostolic Church. But I think community, looking at the community in terms of the optics of what we're doing, that should be a consideration, but it's not the only consideration, because actually what we also need is counsel. So we need to be seeing how are other leaders responding to this, godly men and women that we look up to responding to this. This is part of this conversation forum tonight, is part of that process for us to understand at what point. So we've got community, we've got counsel, and I also think conviction. Leadership conviction is crucial to this stuff, because if we wait for the community to be permitting us to do it and council to be saying we should be doing it, then like we could be waiting forever, because not everyone is always going to be at the place where we all go yes at the same time. So conviction is crucial in a leader. When it's in your gut and you're thinking, we need to get back into a meeting place, and every church may be different to that extent, and that's okay, providing, I think what you've said is really helpful. Assess your motives, assess your intentions, and it's like David prayer, search my heart. Like, God, if there's anything unclean in me, like make it known, like, the sin I know about and the sin I don't know about. And I think when you are living a life like that in surrender to God, you make much better leadership decisions, because it's no longer about your platform. It's about the glory of God and the reaching of humanity. And so coming into now totally land this plane, we've got about 10 minutes left. Paul Howes put a question further up. I don't know if you can find it, Richard. And I think I'd like to unpack this idea. Okay, so the future, like obviously the message is the same, the mission is the same, the model. Let's talk about the model. Craig Rochelle again, he says that I think someone else actually said it first, but that you marry the mission, but you date the model, right? I love that saying because it helps me understand. We have no allegiance to the model, but we have total allegiance to the mission and the mandate. So what does the future of the church's mission look like from where you're leading?
Sure. I mean, there was one comment someone made about laying hands on screen. I totally believe that the church needs to be in person, and what I mean by that is there will always be a place for small groups. The world revolves around small groups, not just the church. The world. Whether it's a family unit, whether it's a small group in a workplace, whether it's a small group of friends. The way the world is constructed is around small groups who actually do connect and touch one another. And I think, as the church considers its future, especially in the West, it goes back to Jesus called the disciples. He called them out. He gathered them. He sat with them. He talked with them. He discipled them. That's the future of the church. And some people will say, is that a model? Well, I think it is a model for us. And that is, there needs to be interaction, small groups where we connect with one another, we talk with one another, we live with one another in the right sense, and work through or knock the edges off one another. That's the future. Does that mean we won't have large gatherings? No, I absolutely believe in large gatherings. But the trouble we've had is a focus on large gatherings at the expense of the small group where I actually sit and talk with a Dom and say, hey, Dom, how's your relationship with Lou? Are you doing the things a good dad should do with the boys? Are you're taking care of your finances? And these are all discipleship questions. And Jesus called us to make disciples, not to grow large gatherings on Sunday. Jesus didn't mention that. He said, I will build my church. But he didn't mention gathering together on Sunday like we do. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. But what I am saying is this: we're called to make disciples. And that responsibility exists wherever we go. And we know it make disciples of all nations or all people groups. And finding a method to do that is the challenge in the West. I think in many developing countries, it's working. It's low cost. It's able to be reproduced very, very quickly, but it revolves around being called out and actually going and doing what we're supposed to do. So it's a brief one. Ruth, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not so much about the house church. Do you know what I mean? I'm about the small groups with the larger gathering. Because I believe that there's something about coming together corporately, a whole lot of groups of people coming into a room to be challenged and to be able to worship God together, all of that kind of thing. But if we focus so much on the large gathering in the future and it just keeps going the way it was going prior to COVID, the disappointment in who we are in God, who we are as leaders, it gets to the point where we don't want to do it anymore. There's been so many leaders that have dropped off out, just said it's all too hard, I can't do it. The pressure of the numbers, the pressure of performance, the pressure of all this stuff. And I feel like through COVID, God got the carpet and he ripped it out and he said, okay, it's all gone. Now start to seek my face, start to come before me and allow me to drop into your spirit the things that I want you to pick up again, the things I want you to do again, the things I want you to step into, the new things that are going to come. Have we got an answer yet for what the way we think church should look? No, we're still seeking him, but we're very slow on going back into having all the things that were running the way they were. And we're really probably been pushing more, get into small groups, and encouraging people to, I guess, press into God and go into discipleship in a greater way. I don't know if that answers properly.
I mean, to reiterate, for us, we've got a building that seats 900. Our goal is to fill the building multiple times.
Yeah.
And people will say, is that in contrast to what you've said? No, I don't think it is. We're not building a crowd, we're building a community.
Yeah.
And that community is a group of Christ followers. And that means in the crowd, we will have a whole bunch of people that are, if 10 is full on for Christ, there'll be 2. Their spiritual well-being has still got a long way to go. Well, we're still going to build a large crowd of people that gather together on Sunday, but not at the expense of their spiritual development. We want both. So we want the building to be filled multiple times. We want to add new locations. We want to connect with people online who we may not reach otherwise. The goal is still the same. It's to preach the gospel in all the world. It's to make disciples. But I think where we've gone wrong in the West is and for me, discipleship is not teaching. Some people, we're doing discipleship, which they just say they're just teaching. No, discipleship is life transformation. It's much, much more. It's intensive. It's hard work. It means confrontation. Christ went through so much he spent 3 years with 12 people. That's discipleship. And we've got to find a way for the church to do the same thing. At the same time, Jesus had, whether it was 5 or 15,000 people in the crowds that he had large crowds as well. I think we can do all of it, but we've got to make sure that we're not enamored with the crowd, but rather our focus is on building the community, which is the church.
And there's elements in the service that you don't want to throw everything out. You don't want to go, right, it's all going and I'm going to start again. I mean, I love worship, and when we worship God, something just brings us into his presence in a powerful way. I don't want to get rid of that. I want to actually start to run more worship services and prophetic nights and prayer nights where people can soak in the presence of God. But that's probably going to be a different time to our Sunday morning service. I love the teaching. I want to get teaching. So I don't want to forego those kind of things. But it's finding how we do it differently to be more successful, because we weren't being successful in the other way. We weren't. It was just putting more and more pressure, more and more performance. Yeah. And now it's like I'm saying, God, I just want to see people coming to know you. I just want to see people in droves finding you and being discipled and being solid. I don't want lukewarm Christians. The Bible says you're either hot or cold. And so come on, let's get hot for God.
That's right. You're either up at 5 or you're up at 6. One of the two.
That's
like,
it. But hot, So we don't have the answer on how it should look, but I don't think we're meant to. I think people have got to seek God. And I think we've got to find a place of what God wants.
I think Dom's trying to say something.
Sorry, Dom.
No, I don't want to stop. I mean, Ruth, what you're saying, I mean, when you speak in that way, Ruth, I switch from listening to it as leadership insight to prophetic. And I think that what you're speaking is really profound and really helpful for us to hear, because I think you're sensing something in the spirit and you're speaking from where you see it. But I actually think there is something that we need to be hearing here in the UK, just of that shift from what you're talking about, crowd to community, to the emphasis on smaller groups. And I actually think this isn't us finding a new path. It's actually us recovering an old path. I think that's what I see in Acts, and that's I guess for me, I've seen it for some time, but I haven't had the courage, or it's hard to stop a train when it's moving, isn't it? It's hard. The church is like a steam train, and you're just flying by the seat of your pants. And I don't even get that saying. That saying's so weird. That is right, though, isn't it? Sounds weird. Flying by the seat of my pants. Bouncing from Sunday to Sunday, from event to event, from course to course, from program to program, seeing a measure of fruit, but largely because of the attractional pull of what we're doing, aka, making ministry palatable and sometimes entertaining to the point where it's easiest for people to accept and swallow, rather than really engaging in the messy stuff called discipleship. And when you look at recovering an old path, and you look in Acts 2, what you see is a regular gathering of people in the temple courts, but the purpose of that gathering was missional. It wasn't for holy huddles. So if we were to lift that as a model, we would say Sunday should be way more missional, less about the feeding the people, the saints. This is about us bringing people to a place where they can hear the gospel spoken, where they can see what it looks like to be in the Christ-centered community, and to see all the benefits and friendships that flow from that. But then it says that they broke bread in homes. And I think what we've done in the West is we've reversed that. We've done something that was always intended to happen in small community, these really intimate moments of God's presence and encounter that should happen with the ecclesia, the called out ones. And what we've done with this, and so I think there's this recovery of this value, an emphasis on small groups, where actually, and we're not just talking about another program or strategy or structure, but genuine Christ-centered friendships that are grieving together, that are laughing together, that are championing one another in God. And actually, when it's even hard to know how to frame it, they don't go to church on the Sunday because they know church isn't something you go to. Church is something that you become. And so when they go to Sunday, it just affirms the reality of what is already true Monday to Saturday. But Sunday is a collective experience where there's an opportunity for us to see it happen on a bigger scale. So I think for me, trying to, I guess, land this plane now, is just, for me, the future. I think we're going to see the shift of emphasis in that way, that we're going to see a movement where it's gatherings, number one, Sunday gatherings, and then we have this small group model bolted onto the side of church. Whereas now, so we're not a church with small groups, we're a church of small groups, and it is different. And we're not talking about small groups in we're all doing a course and we're all doing this. It's actually genuine Christ-centered communities, and that's easier said than done. But I think that what COVID has offered us is the train hitting the wall and now saying there's an opportunity. And my biggest fear about restarting church next Sunday in a physical gathering is not will people come or not, because we've already got registration open and it looks hopeful at the moment. But it's actually, how do we, for the love of God, make sure we don't fall back into what we were? How do we make sure we don't just start the train moving again without kind of doing what we need to do to make sure that it's fit for purpose going forward? So any closing words on that?
I mean, we've all got to contend. Like I said earlier, I think the challenge the Western Church had prior to COVID is only more obvious now as a result of COVID. And that is, we need to move back to the uncomfortable feeling that comes from meeting together in a relationship that focuses on discipleship. The reason the crowd love to gather is because it doesn't force vulnerability. If I talk to you personally about issues that are in your life, it means exposure for me, it means exposure for you. There's a level of vulnerability, authenticity. There's more likely to be times of prayer and confession. There are issues that are going to be dealt with that you'll either face up to or you'll run away with. All of these are reasons why we run away from discipleship and why we run to the crowd, because the crowd affirms, the crowd encourages. That you can walk away from a crowd feeling good, whether you're leading the crowd or whether you're in the crowd. But when you've got an intense discussion with someone about something that's really profound, really important, it leaves you with something to do. And I think of the conversation Jesus had with Peter when he responded to Peter and he said, "Get behind me, Satan." Son of God, Savior of the world, the Messiah Peter was looking forward, calls Peter Satan. It was a discipleship moment. It was Jesus addressing Peter's attitude. And you know, I don't think we have enough of those encounters with one another that actually lift our followership to the place where Jesus desires us to be. There's a lot of work to do. If I can say something, and I know we get to the end, I want to encourage church leaders. We're all different. We all have different focuses, different challenges, and yet God's chosen you anyway. You're not the wrong fit. It's just you've got to find where you fit and do what you're called to do. Do what you're gifted to do. If you're feeling discouraged, get alongside someone who can encourage you. If you're feeling discouraged, get alongside someone you can also encourage. Don't just look for being filled up by somebody else, but look to fill somebody else up. You're leading a group of people, whether that group of people remains the same or whether it's decreased. Every person matters, and you might be disappointed that you've lost some people, but that doesn't change the fact that you've still got people that you love, that you ought to be caring for, that you can disciple. And you may say, "Well, I've just mucked it up for the last 10 years. I haven't discipled." Well, start now. It's a simple matter of asking forgiveness and saying, "Okay, I'm going to refocus." And I'm going to do the thing that Christ has called me to do. So I don't want anyone to be discouraged by this discussion. I know it can be uncomfortable, but the end result we're after is for the kingdom of God to grow and for all of us to grow in the process. So,
and I truly believe that God's about to do an extraordinary move. You know, we've been crying out for it, but revival isn't something that just happen. It can, but what I'm saying is revival starts in us, starts in the people, starts in the individual. And I really believe for even the UK and even beyond that God's doing something so powerful. He didn't bring COVID, but he certainly has allowed COVID to be a time for us to learn, to grow, to develop, to be stronger in him. And because of that, the outworking in the nations is going to be phenomenal. So we've got to get ready, because the floodgates are going to be opened up, and we are going to see our buildings filled with people again, but we've got to be ready that when it's filled with people, we're going to pull them in and we're going to disciple them, and they're going to be solid, hot Christians, not cold or not lukewarm, but hot, because God's doing something and he's saying, "Are you ready?" So if I can say anything to all of you today, are you ready for what God's about to do? And if you're feeling nervous, well, then get into his presence and say, "God, I'm ready. Use me. Do whatever you have to do with me. Get rid of some of my mindsets. Shake off the rubbish that needs to go from my life. Get rid of it now, God. I don't want it anymore, because I'm your servant, and I'm not going to be the same as I was 12 months ago. I'm going in a new person. I'm a new servant, ready to serve you no matter what. And whatever you want, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to be ready for it." Because watch, the people are coming. They're going to come from all over the place. They're just going to walk into your churches. We're seeing this. We're seeing people just coming and going, "Oh my goodness," but God's doing it. Don't be surprised by what God wants to do, but you got to be ready for what God wants to do. So there's a difference. You know, we can go, "Oh," but let's not be surprised. Let's go, "Yeah, that's what God said he was going to do, and I'm ready for it. I'm going to be his servant."
Come on,
Right.
let's get some high tens in the chat for that. I mean, I want all of that as a
That's
leader.
so good.
More God, more
Yeah,
presence,
so good.
more effective mission. That's
Yeah.
what I want to see. And to land this broadcast, like the theme of tonight was the church and the future. And I kind of started with the question that, if we can go to camera 2, Richard, we kind of put on the board over here, which is, does the future have a church? And I don't know if you can see it, but it's written on the board. Ivan, our national leader, wasn't keen on that title when I suggested it to him, so I certainly put it in the background over there. Does the future have a church? But I think you've answered tonight. The future is the church.
Yes.
Like, that's what the future is. It's the community of God going from glory to glory. And so let's believe for that.
Yeah.
And even, whilst we've been talking, someone from Sunny Hill who has been watching this, the legend that is Matt Meller, only dropped off some donuts. That's what I'm talking about. And every other Sunny Hillite in the chat room, shame on you. Shame on you for not getting in there faster. Woo-hoo. This is so good.
Yes,
that's what I'm talking about. By the way, do you guys know how Bob Marley likes his donuts? We're jamming.
I think you need to do another live broadcast of you sitting and eating every one of those donuts, one after the other. That would be entertaining.
Matt is just trying to add to my COVID baggage that I'm adding on a regular basis.
COVID stone.
I spoke this morning at church about how fat I am, and like, here we go. It's just like, he's not helping me. But hey, thank you so much. And everyone's just saying thank you in the chat rooms. You've been amazing. One of the, someone suggesting that I have donuts for breakfast. Oh, that was a personal text. I don't know who that is. That's it. But yeah, I agree to that. And someone just posted a question a bit further up, and I don't just want to ignore it, just saying, like, how would we do small groups? Now, we're not going to answer that now, but the NLT is committed to equipping all levels of leadership within the AC UK. Like, we don't just want to equip pastors. We want to equip emerging leaders. We want to equip kids leaders and worship leaders. We want to equip leaders to rise, because we know that the future of the movement only rises and falls on the quality of leaders that we have. And so this is what Next Sessions is about. And so I think at the next conference or sometime in the near future, I think we'll try and get into the practical components of how we can make some of the shifts that we want to see. How do we create healthy small groups, and how do we do that in the time in which we live? And so I think there's a conference coming up in May, our next conference, which is a weekend affair. And that's going to be amazing. And maybe you'll hear from Pastor Wayne and Ruth again. And hopefully there's no hours changes and all that kind of stuff. So I apologize. Ivan Parker's endorsing the new title. The future is the church. Right. He prefers that. Yes. All right, that's cool. Fair enough. I submit to my superior. But Ruth, would you pray for us? And Wayne, the reason I'm not asking you is just because Ruth's better at praying, basically. And we know she hates the church, so she needs all the prayer she can get. So that's awesome.
Sure. Father, I thank you so much for tonight. I thank you that, Lord, you have been evidently present with us. And God, I just pray right now for every leader in the UK and beyond that is listening tonight, that, Lord, you will come and do something powerful in each and every one of them. Lord, I pray for downloads right now. I pray that, Lord, as they seek your face, that you will give them strategies and ideas and things to do that, Lord, will be the catapulting thing that will see people's lives change, see people coming into relationship with you, that, Lord, there's going to be an absolute incredible move of your spirit, because this is what you want. You want people to come into the fullness of who you are. And so I pray for an incredible fresh anointing to come upon every single leader right now. And that, Lord, I also thank you that we can rest in you. We can be assured that you're with us, that you never leave us, you never forsake us, that, God, you give us the tools in our hands to do whatever it is that we are required to do. Father, I pray for fear to be gone as people come into fellowship again. I pray that, Lord, people's disappointment won't be there, that they will feel a peace, that, Lord, as they walk into their churches and they, Lord, how many people come, it doesn't matter. They're going to know that you're in the midst, that you're doing something, and that, Lord, if we have to regroup and go, okay, if we have to repioneer, God, then that's what we'll do, but we're going to do it your way and the way you want. Father, I thank you that we've got you that this is all about you, and everything we do is for you and for your purpose and for the extension of your kingdom. So we thank you for that in your precious name. Amen.
Amen. Wayne and Ruth, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We love you guys. Every time we spend time with you, we love you a little bit more, especially you, Ruth. Wayne, we love you guys so much. Thank you for all you imparted and invested tonight.
Thank you.
Great to be with you all.
How good was that?
Oh my goodness!
Oh,
I feel ready now.
Feel ready?
I feel ready
Go on,
now.
go. Take your donut. No, don't take the donuts. Leave the donuts and you go.
Right.
That's fine.
That's so good. Really hope that helped some of our leaders in the Apostolic Church just find their feet a little bit in this.
There's a lot to consider, but I think it's good. Whatever the future holds in terms of restrictions, persecutions, all this kind of stuff, Jesus says, I'll build my church, and I'm inclined to believe him. So that's awesome. And so there may be some shifts that we need to make in church. There may be some things that we need to address immediately and think about and consider. Let me leave you with this thought, okay? Is Richard, our ops pastor, who has helped tonight, by the way. Thank you, Richard. Round of applause to Richard. Richard is such a legend just for serving the ACUK in this way. So thank you for all you're doing. I'm sure there's love for you in the chat room as well. But let me leave you with this thought when you're thinking about all the stuff you need to address. And the thought is this, is that the best time to plant an oak tree was 300 years ago, okay?
Yeah.
That was the best time to plant an oak tree. But the second best time to plant an oak tree is today. So let's get to it. Let's not delay. Let's not give off excuses. Let's get to planting some significant things today for the glory of God. Have an amazing week. Have a great Easter. Have a great Passion Week. We look forward to seeing you in May. Bye, guys.